The widow found a drifting boat, and the hidden secret inside changed her destiny. Jennifer felt her heart race when she saw that familiar shape rocking in the calm waters of Coconut Beach. Baby Ethan was crying in her arms, while her older son, Christopher James, ran ahead of her across the damp morning sand. It was impossible. It couldn't be true. But the closer she got, the more certain she became. It was Michael's boat. 2 years. It had been 2 years since he'd left on a foggy morning like this, promising to return before lunch with fresh fish for the family. 2 years she had waited, cried, wondered what had happened. And now his boat was there, adrift, covered in seaweed, as if it had been at the bottom of the sea all this time. "Mommy, why did you stop?" Christopher James came running back, noticing his mother had stopped walking. The 6-year-old boy looked where she was staring. "It's Daddy's boat." "Yes, my son." Jennifer's voice came out trembling. Ethan stopped crying as if sensing his mother's tension. "It's your father's boat." The small wooden boat with its weathered wood rocked gently just meters from the shore. Jennifer stepped into the water still dressed, soaking her green dress up to her knees. She needed to see it up close, she needed to be sure. Christopher James stayed on the sand, holding his little brother, whom his mother had placed in his arms. When she got close enough, there was no more doubt. It was the Our Lady of Grace. The name painted on the side was faded but still visible. The same ropes Michael used to tie his nets, the same seat where he sat to fish. But something was different. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. At the bottom of the boat, partially covered by an old tarp, Jennifer noticed a loose plank. She had never seen that before. Michael took care of the boat as if it were his child. Every piece of wood had its proper place. Why would a plank be loose? She pulled the boat onto the shore with difficulty, the weight of the waterlogged wood requiring all her effort. Christopher James ran to help, still carrying Ethan in his arms with the care of an older brother. "Let me help, Mommy." "Okay, but be careful with Ethan." Together, they managed to drag the boat onto the dry sand. Jennifer knelt beside the loose plank, her heart pounding. Her hands trembled as she lifted the wood. Underneath was a compartment she never knew existed. Inside it, protected by thick plastic, were papers, photographs, and documents she had never seen in her life. The first photo she picked up almost made her faint. It was Michael, but not as she knew him. He was dressed in expensive clothes, smiling next to an older man in a suit. They were in front of a modern building that definitely wasn't in the small fisherman's cove where they lived. "Who is that man, Mommy?" Christopher James peeked over her shoulder. "I don't know, my love, I don't know." Jennifer picked up another paper. It was a partnership contract. Michael Thompson was listed as a partner in a company called Ocean Harvest LLC, along with someone named Richard Anderson. The company sold fish to restaurants in New York. New York. Michael had never mentioned New York. He always said he only fished to sell at the local village market. Why had he never told her about this partnership? Ethan started crying again, and Christopher James rocked his brother, trying to calm him. "Mommy, Ethan is hungry." Jennifer quickly put the papers in her bag. She needed to get back home. She needed to think. But she also needed answers. After 2 years believing she knew everything about her husband's life, discovering he had secrets left her confused and hurt. The way back home seemed longer than ever. The simple wooden house where they lived was at the end of the main street in Fisherman's Cove, a small community on the southern coast of North Carolina. It was the family home of Michael, where his mother, Mrs. Dorothy, also lived. When they arrived, Mrs. Dorothy was on the porch peeling potatoes for lunch. She was a 65-year-old woman with graying hair always tied in a bun who had become the family's pillar after her son's departure. "Jennifer, you're all wet. What happened?" "Mrs. Dorothy, Jennifer hesitated. How was she going to explain what she had found? "I found Michael's boat." The knife Mrs. Dorothy was holding stopped in mid-air. She looked at her daughter-in-law with a strange expression, as if she were seeing a ghost. "Michael's boat?" "Yes. It was adrift on the beach. And there were things inside it." Mrs. Dorothy stood up slowly, the potatoes forgotten in the bowl. What kind of things? Jennifer took the papers out of her bag. Documents, photographs, things I've never seen before. Did you know he had a company in New York? Mrs. Dorothy's face turned pale. She sat down heavily in the rocking chair. Jennifer, You knew! Jennifer's voice came out louder than she intended. Christopher James looked frightened at the two women. You knew and never told me. It's not what you're thinking. Then what is it? Why did everyone know about my husband's life except me? Mrs. Dorothy sighed deeply. He made me promise not to tell. Said it was to protect you and the children. Protect from what? Sit here, my dear. I'll explain everything. Jennifer sat in the chair next to her mother-in-law, still holding Ethan. Christopher James settled on the floor, playing with some twigs he had found in the yard, but clearly paying attention to the adults' conversation. Michael met this man, Richard, about 3 years ago. Richard used to come here to the cove buying fish to take to New York. He had big restaurants there and needed fresh fish every week. Mrs. Dorothy paused, as if organizing her thoughts. At first, it was just business. Michael fished, sold to Richard, and earned much more than selling at the local market. But then, Richard proposed a partnership. Said if Michael invested some money, they could open a company together. What money? We never had money to invest in anything. Michael took out a loan, used the house as collateral. Jennifer felt the world spin. He mortgaged the house? Our house? He said it was a safe investment, that it would make a lot of money, and we could get out of poverty. And you let him? I didn't know. He only told me after he had done everything. Said he was afraid to speak because you were pregnant with Ethan, and he didn't want to worry you. Jennifer stood up from the chair, indignant. So he decided to gamble our house without even consulting me? He was trying to give you a better life, by lying to me. Ethan started crying again, sensing his mother's agitation. Christopher James stopped playing and looked worried. Mommy, why are you fighting? Jennifer took a deep breath, trying to calm down. We're not fighting, my love. We're just talking. But inside, she was seething. How could Michael have made such an important decision without even talking to her? And why had Mrs. Dorothy never said anything? Mrs. Dorothy, what else do you know that you haven't told me? The older woman fidgeted nervously with her hands. He said the business wasn't going well, that there were problems with suppliers, that he owed money. How much did he owe? A lot, Jennifer. A lot of money. And where is this Richard now? I don't know. After Michael disappeared, he never showed up around here again. Jennifer looked again at the papers she had found. The contract had an address in Boston. Maybe Richard was still there. I need to go after this man. I need answers. Jennifer, don't do this. Let the past be. How can I let it be? My house might be mortgaged. I have 2 small children to raise, and now I find out my husband had a whole life I knew nothing about. Mrs. Dorothy stood up and held her daughter-in-law's arm. Dear, I understand your anger, but stirring up these things could be dangerous. Dangerous how? I don't know. I just know that Michael was very worried before he left. He said there were people demanding money, people who weren't to be taken lightly. What kind of people? Suppliers, people from the restaurants, those who had lent money to the company. Jennifer sat down again, trying to process everything. In just a few hours, her life had been turned upside down. The husband she thought she knew completely had turned out to be a stranger full of secrets. Aunt, are you going to give me food? Ethan is crying from hunger. Christopher James approached Mrs. Dorothy. Of course, my grandson, let's have lunch. Your mother needs to eat too. During lunch, Jennifer could barely eat. Her mind wouldn't stop thinking about the day's discoveries. Michael had lied to her, hidden a company, mortgaged the house, gotten involved with dangerous people. Did she really know the man she was married to? After putting Ethan to sleep and Christopher James went to play in the backyard, Jennifer went back to examining the papers more carefully. Besides the partnership contract, there were invoices, receipts, and handwritten notes in Michael's own hand. One note caught her attention. Richard wants $50,000 by the end of the month. I don't know what else to do. 50,000 rees. For a family that had always struggled to get by, it was an impossible fortune to obtain. Another note said, "I talked to Rachel. She said she could help, but she'll want a partnership too." Rachel? Who was Rachel? Michael had never mentioned any Rachel. Jennifer picked up the photographs again. Besides the pictures with Richard, there were a few others. One showed Michael at a fish market she didn't recognize, surrounded by several people. Another showed him at an elegant restaurant, sitting at a table with a man and a woman. The woman was young, pretty, with blonde hair. She was smiling at the camera in a way that bothered Jennifer. It was an intimate smile, too affectionate to be just professional. "Who are you, Rachel?" Jennifer murmured at the photo. On the back of the photograph was written, "Business lunch, Rachel, Richard and me, Boston, March 2020. March 2020. 3 months before Michael disappeared. 3 months before her life turned upside down. Jennifer decided she would go to Boston the next day. She needed to find Richard. She needed to understand what had happened to the company. And she needed to find out who this Rachel was. "Mrs. Dorothy," she called her mother-in-law, who was washing dishes in the kitchen. "Can you watch the children tomorrow?" "What for?" "I'm going to Boston. I need to talk to this Richard." "Jennifer, I already told you. And I already said I need answers. I'm not going to stay here waiting without knowing if my house is mortgaged, if I have debts, if—" "All right." Mrs. Dorothy dried her hands on the dish towel. "But be careful, and don't do anything that could put you in danger." That night, Jennifer could hardly sleep. She kept looking at the photographs by the lamplight, trying to understand who the man she had loved was. The Michael she knew was simple, honest, hard-working. He had never shown ambition for money or a luxurious life. But the photos showed a different man. A man who wore expensive clothes, who frequented elegant restaurants, who had business in big cities. Was he always like that, and she just never noticed? Or had he changed after meeting Richard? And that blonde woman, Rachel, what exactly did she represent in Michael's life? Was she just a business partner, or was there something more between them? Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now, continuing. The next day, Jennifer woke up early. She left Ethan and Christopher James with Mrs. Dorothy and took the first bus to Boston. The trip took 2 hours, enough time for her to organize her questions and prepare what she would say to Richard. The address from the contract was in a commercial area downtown. When Jennifer arrived there, she found a modern glass and steel building, very different from the simple constructions of Fisherman's Cove. On the 10th floor, the door had a golden plaque. Ocean Harvest LLC, Richard Anderson, Director. Jennifer took a deep breath and knocked on the door. "Come in," the voice came from inside the office. Jennifer opened the door and found herself facing a man approximately 50 years old, with graying hair, wearing a navy blue suit. It was the same man from the photographs. "Can I help you with something?" Richard stood up from the desk, clearly not recognizing her. "My name is Jennifer Thompson. I'm the widow of Michael Thompson." Richard's face changed completely. He turned pale and sat down again. You're Michael's wife?" "I was. He disappeared 2 years ago." "I know. I'm very sorry." "You know? How do you know?" Richard gestured for her to sit in the chair opposite the desk. "Michael told me about you and the children. He always talked about you, but I never knew you existed. He didn't want to mix personal life with business. He said he wanted to protect the family from financial worries." "And what were those worries?" Richard sighed. "The company wasn't doing well, Jennifer." "May I call you Jennifer?" "You may. Why wasn't it doing well?" "Several factors. The competition was very fierce. Transportation costs increased. Some restaurants cancelled contracts." "And then?" "Michael was very worried. He had invested a lot of money in the company, money that you couldn't afford to lose. Money that he borrowed using our house as collateral." Richard looked surprised. "You know about that?" "I found out yesterday. What else do I need to know?" "Jennifer, perhaps it's better to leave things as they are. Michael didn't come back, the company closed, and and I was left knowing nothing. I have 2 small children, Mr. Richard. I need to know if I have debts, if I'm going to lose my house, if there's money that belongs to me." Richard stood up and went to the window. He stood for a few seconds looking at the busy street below. "There is money, yes." Jennifer's heart raced. "How much?" The company had a reserve account. Michael insisted that this money couldn't be touched while there were outstanding debts. And are there outstanding debts? Some, yes, but nothing that can't be resolved. "How much money is in the account?" Richard returned to the desk and opened a drawer. He took out a folder and flipped through some papers. $85,000. Jennifer almost fell out of her chair. It was more money than she had ever seen in her entire life. "And what needs to be done for me to access this money?" "Well, technically, you're a partner in the company now. With Michael's disappearance, you inherit his share. So the money is mine." "It's yours, yes, but what?" "There are some legal formalities. You need to sign some documents, transfer the partnership, pay off the outstanding debts." "What debts?" Richard consulted the papers again. "There are 3 suppliers who haven't been paid yet. It totals $22,000. So $63,000 would be left for me." "Exactly." Jennifer fell silent. It was an amount that would completely change her life and her children's. I could pay off the house mortgage, buy a new boat, maybe even open a small business. "What do I need to sign?" Richard took more papers from the drawer. "These are documents transferring the partnership to you and authorizing the payment of the debts." Jennifer took the documents and began reading. There were many technical terms she didn't quite understand. "Can I take these papers home? I want to show them to someone who understands documents better." Richard hesitated. "Of course, but the sooner we resolve this, the better. The suppliers are charging interest on the debts." "I understand. I'll review everything and come back in a few days." "Perfect. And Jennifer." "Yes?" "Michael truly loved you and the children. Everything he did was thinking about giving you a better life." On the bus ride back home, Jennifer couldn't stop thinking. 85,000 rays. It was a fortune to her. But something about Richard's behavior bothered her. He seemed too anxious for her to sign the papers. When she arrived home, Mrs. Dorothy was bathing Ethan while Christopher James played in the backyard. "How did it go, dear?" "I met that Richard. He said there's money from the company. A lot of money." "How much?" 85,000 reais. Mrs. Dorothy almost dropped Ethan in the bathtub. 85,000. But there are also debts, and he wants me to sign some papers to release the money. "What kind of papers?" Jennifer showed the documents to her mother-in-law. Mrs. Dorothy examined them carefully, although she admitted she didn't understand much about legal matters. "Jennifer, I think you should show these to someone who understands. There's that lawyer in town, Attorney Charles, who has helped some families here." "Good idea. I'll look for him tomorrow." That night, after putting the children to sleep, Jennifer went back to examining the photographs. The image of the blonde woman, Rachel, continued to bother her. There was something about the way she looked at Michael in the photo, something that didn't seem just professional. On the back of one of the photos, she found a phone number written down. It was a number with the Boston area code. Could it be Rachel's phone number? Jennifer borrowed the neighbor's phone and dialed the number. After a few rings, a female voice answered. "Hello? Hello, I'd like to speak with Rachel." "Speaking, who is this?" "My name is Jennifer. I was Michael Thompson's wife." There was a long silence on the other end of the line. "You're Michael's wife?" "Yes. I'd like to talk with you." "About what?" "About the business you did together. I found some photos. Look, it's not a good idea for us to talk on the phone. Can you come to Boston?" "Yes, I can." "Tomorrow, 2 in the afternoon, at the Central Market. I'll be at stall 47, selling crafts. Ask for Rachel Anderson." The call ended. Rachel seemed nervous, as if she were afraid of something. The next day, Jennifer took the documents to Attorney Charles before traveling to Boston again. The lawyer was a middle-aged man who kept a simple office in the town next to Fisherman's Cove. "Mrs. Jennifer, these documents need to be reviewed carefully. Can I keep them for a few days?" "Of course, attorney. But the man said it's urgent because of the interest on the debts." "That's exactly why I need to review everything calmly. Sometimes haste is the enemy of the right decision. Do you think there might be a problem? I can't say anything yet, but it's always good to be sure before signing anything. After the lawyer's office, Jennifer took another bus to Boston. This time she was even more nervous. Talking to Richard had been difficult, but at least she was prepared. With Rachel, it would be different. She didn't know what to expect. The Central Market was a busy place in the historic center of Boston. Jennifer had never been there before and was impressed by the number of stalls selling crafts, food, and souvenirs. Stall 47 sold necklaces, bracelets, and decorative items made from shells and seeds. A blonde woman around 30 years old was organizing the merchandise. She was the same woman from the photographs. Rachel. The woman looked up and recognized Jennifer immediately. You look just like the description Michael used to give. Sit here. Rachel pointed to a plastic chair behind the stall. The spot offered a bit more privacy for them to talk. What do you want to know? I want to know what kind of relationship you had. Rachel sighed. Michael never told you about me. Never. Not about Richard, not about the company, not about anything. He was trying to protect you. Protect me from what? Please tell me the truth. Rachel looked around, as if checking if anyone could hear them. Michael and Richard met here at the market. I've been working in fish sales for over 10 years. Richard used to come buy fish for his restaurants in New York. And you? I was the middleman. I knew the best fishermen. I knew where to find fresh, quality fish. Richard hired me to organize the suppliers. And Michael was one of the suppliers? He was the best. The fish he brought was always fresh. He was punctual, reliable. Richard was very impressed. So that's how the partnership started. Exactly. Richard proposed that Michael invest in the company to become a partner. He said that way he would make a lot more money. And you? What was your role? Rachel was silent for a few seconds. I also became a partner. I was responsible for all the purchasing and logistics here in North Carolina. So the three of you were partners. We were. Why didn't Richard tell me this yesterday? Rachel seemed surprised. You spoke with Richard. I did. He said I was the heir to Michael's share and that there were 85,000 reais in the company account. 85,000? Rachel shook her head. Jennifer, that's not right. What do you mean? When Michael disappeared, the company had over 200,000 reais in the account. Jennifer's world spun again. 200,000? Yes, and Richard knows that very well. Then why did he tell me it was only 85,000? Because he's trying to keep part of the money. Jennifer felt anger and despair at the same time. What can I do? First, don't sign anything he gives you. Second, find a good attorney. Third, ask to see all the company's bank statements. He said there were debts of 22,000 reais. That might be true, but even so, there would be much more left than what he's offering you. Rachel stood up and grabbed a water bottle. She offered it to Jennifer, who accepted it gratefully. Jennifer, I need to tell you something. Richard and I have been fighting for a long time. Why? Because after Michael disappeared, Richard wanted to remove me from the partnership. He said I was no longer needed. And you accepted. I had no choice. He threatened me. Threatened how? He said he could make things up, say that I had stolen money from the company. I couldn't defend myself alone against a rich and influential man. Jennifer was beginning to understand that Richard wasn't the trustworthy person he had seemed to be. Rachel, can I ask you a personal question? Go ahead. You and Michael, did you have any kind of relationship beyond business? Rachel lowered her eyes. Jennifer, I didn't want to tell you this. Jennifer's heart raced. Tell me. I fell in love with Michael. The words hit Jennifer like a punch in the stomach. And him? He always made it clear that he loved you and the children. He never returned my feelings. But did you have any relationship? No. Michael was a man of integrity. No matter how much I tried to get close to him, he always kept his distance. Jennifer felt immense relief, but also sadness for Rachel. Why are you telling me this? Because you deserve to know the truth, and because Michael asked me to look after you if anything happened to him. Did he know something was going to happen? He was very worried these past few months. Richard was pushing for risky investments, Wanted to expand too quickly. What kind of investments? Buying bigger boats, hiring more fishermen, opening offices in other cities. Michael thought it was too much too fast. And Richard? Richard was in a hurry to get rich. He didn't care about the risks. Do you think Richard had something to do with Michael's disappearance? Rachel hesitated before answering. I don't know, Jennifer. I just know that Richard changed a lot after Michael vanished. He became more aggressive, more greedy. What do you think I should do? Fight for what's yours. Michael worked hard to leave an inheritance for you and the children. Don't let Richard steal that from you. Would you help me? How? You know the business, you know the accounts, you know how things work. If you testify that there was more money in the company... Jennifer, this is dangerous. Richard has a lot of power, many connections. But it's the right thing to do. Rachel was thoughtful for a few moments. All right, I'll help you. But we need to be very careful. What do you suggest? First, we'll get a copy of the bank statements. Second, we'll document everything we know about the company. Third, we'll look for an attorney who isn't afraid to stand up to Richard. Do you know any attorney like that? Yes, I do. A young man who just graduated and is starting his career. He's brave and honest. When can we go see him? Right now, if you want. His office is nearby. Jennifer and Rachel walked through the streets of the historic center until they reached an old and simple building. On the third floor, a small sign indicated, Attorney Jonathan Miller, lawyer. The office was modest, with a desk, 2 chairs, and some shelves with law books. Jonathan was a young man, about 28 years old, who received the 2 women with interest and attention. Let me understand, he said after hearing the whole story. Richard is trying to take part of the inheritance that legally belongs to you? It seems so, replied Jennifer. And you, he looked at Rachel, can prove that there was more money in the account. I can. I had access to the statements until Michael disappeared. Great. Here's what we'll do. First, I'll request a full audit of the company's accounts. Second, I'll ask for all the money to be frozen until we resolve this matter. Richard won't like this at all, said Rachel. That's his problem. If he's being honest, he has nothing to fear. Attorney Jonathan, Jennifer hesitated. I don't have money to pay attorney fees. Don't worry about that now. If we manage to recover the money that's yours, you pay me a percentage. If we don't, you owe me nothing. Jennifer felt a hope she hadn't felt in years. Finally, someone was willing to help her uncover the truth and fight for her rights. One thing I need to warn you about, said Jonathan. This process might take a few months, and Richard will probably try to make things difficult. I'm prepared. I've waited 2 years for answers. I can wait a little longer. And you, Rachel, are you sure you want to get involved? Richard might try to retaliate. I'm sure. I should have done this a long time ago. When Jennifer returned to Fisherman's Cove that night, she was exhausted but determined. She told everything to Mrs. Dorothy, who was outraged by Richard's attempt to deceive his daughter-in-law. That man is an opportunist, trying to steal from the widow and orphans. But now we have help, Mrs. Dorothy. Rachel and Attorney Miller are going to help me recover what's ours. This Rachel, do you trust her? Jennifer thought about the question. She could have stayed quiet and let Richard deceive me. But she told me the truth, even though it was painful to admit she had been in love with Michael. And she said he never returned her feelings. She did, and I believe her. Michael may have hidden business matters from me, but he would never betray me. In the following days, Jonathan worked quickly. He obtained a court order to freeze all company accounts until the audit was completed. He also requested all documents and bank statements from the last 3 years. Richard was furious. He called Jennifer, screaming over the phone. You don't know who you're dealing with. I offered you a good settlement and you chose to listen to a woman who just wants revenge on me. Mr. Richard, I only want what's rightfully mine. You'll regret this, Jennifer. You'll see you're making a big mistake. The call ended with Richard slamming the phone down. Rachel was also receiving threats. Anonymous calls in the middle of the night, strange people lurking around her market stall, minor acts of vandalism at her home. He's trying to intimidate us, she said during a conversation with Jennifer and Jonathan. but this only proves we're on the right track. You two need to be careful, the lawyer warned. Document any intimidation attempts. This could help our case. 3 weeks later, the audit results came in. Jonathan called Jennifer and Rachel to a meeting in his office. I have good news and bad news, he began. The good news is you were right. There really was over 200,000 Rs in the company account when Michael disappeared. And the bad news? Asked Jennifer. Richard withdrew almost 100,000 Rs from the account over the last 2 years, claiming they were company expenses. But the audit showed many of these expenses were actually personal withdrawals. So he stole 100,000 Rs. Technically, yes. And there's more. He also sold some company equipment without legal authorization. Rachel shook her head. I knew he was doing that. What happens now? Asked Jennifer. Now we go to court. Richard will have to return everything he withdrew illegally, plus interest and adjustments. And you, Jennifer, will receive your full inheritance. How long will that take? With the evidence we have, it shouldn't take long, maybe 2 more months. Jennifer left the office with a light heart. Finally, the truth was coming out. Soon, she would have the resources to give her children a decent life, and maybe even start a small business. But Richard wasn't going to give up easily. A week later, Jennifer received a visit from 2 men at her home. They identified themselves as debt collectors and said Michael owed money to loan sharks. That's a lie, said Jennifer. My husband never got involved with loan sharks. Ma'am, your debt is 50,000 Rs with interest. If you don't pay, we'll have to seize your house. Mrs. Dorothy, who was present, shouted, You're crooks. Get out of my house. Easy there, old lady. We don't want trouble. We just want our money. Jennifer realized this was another attempt by Richard to pressure her. You won't get anything because we owe nothing. And if you keep bothering my family, I'll call the police. The men left, but left a warning. You have 1 week to think it over. Jennifer immediately called Jonathan, who advised, This is intimidation. File a police report and send me a copy. Attorney, do you think Richard is capable of using loan sharks to threaten me? Unfortunately, when desperate people lose a lot of money, they're capable of anything. That night, Jennifer barely managed to sleep. What if Richard had actually hired dangerous people? What if she was putting the family at risk? Mrs. Dorothy noticed her daughter-in-law's worry. Dear, are you afraid? I am, Mrs. Dorothy. What if those people come back? What if they do something to the children? Then we'll go to my sister's house in Charleston for a few days, until things calm down. Good idea. I'll call Rachel and tell her what's happening. Rachel was also facing problems. Her stall at the market had been vandalized, and some suppliers were refusing to sell goods to her. Jennifer, Richard is using all his power to harm us, but we can't give up now. What if he really hired dangerous people? Then we have to trust the justice system and the police. Jonathan said the lawsuit is almost finished. Do you think all this suffering is worth it? Yes, it is. Not just for the money, but for Michael's honor. He doesn't deserve Richard destroying his memory. Jennifer reflected on Rachel's words. She was right. Michael had worked honestly to leave an inheritance for the family. It wasn't fair for Richard to steal it. The next day, she packed their bags and went with the children to Charleston, where they stayed at Mrs. Dorothy's sister's house, a kind lady named Rose. You can stay here as long as you need, said Aunt Rose. That's what family is for. Christopher James, who until then hadn't fully understood what was happening, started asking questions. Mommy, why did we have to leave home? Because Mommy is dealing with some problems and it's better for us to stay here for a while. What kind of problems? Jennifer hesitated. How to explain such a complex situation to a 6-year-old? Remember the money Daddy left for us? A bad man is trying to steal that money. And we're not going to let him, are we, Mommy? No, my son. We're not going to let him. In Charleston, Jennifer kept in daily contact with Jonathan. The lawsuit was progressing well and Richard had been summoned to give statements. He's trying to claim the withdrawals were legitimate, the lawyer explained over the phone, but the evidence against him is very strong. And those people who threatened me? The police are investigating. I believe when the lawsuit is finalized, the threats will stop. 2 weeks later, Jonathan called with great news. Jennifer, Richard accepted a settlement. He'll return all the money he withdrew illegally, plus 50,000 rays in compensation for moral damages. Jennifer could hardly believe it. How much will I receive in total? 230,000 rays. It was an amount that would completely change her life. With that money, she could finally pay off the house, buy a fishing boat, and there would still be money left to invest in the children's education. When can I go back home? You can go back now. Richard signed an agreement committing not to bother you or your family anymore. Jennifer cried with relief. After months of struggle, justice had finally prevailed. The return to Fisherman's Cove was a celebration. The whole community knew about the battle Jennifer had faced, and everyone was happy for her success. You showed that a fisherman's wife is no pushover, said old Joe, one of the village's oldest fishermen. Now you can give these boys a good life, commented Mrs. Margaret, a neighbor and family friend. Mrs. Dorothy was beaming. My daughter-in-law is a warrior. Michael would be proud. The first thing Jennifer did with part of the money was pay off the house mortgage. Finally, there was no longer any risk of losing the home where she had raised her children. Later, she bought a new modern boat to restart the fishing business, but this time it would be different. She would work only locally, without complicated partnerships or risky ventures. Rachel, who had become a true friend throughout the whole process, proposed a partnership. Jennifer, how about we start a small business right here in the village? I know about selling fish. You know about fishing. What kind of business? We could buy fish from the local fishermen and sell directly to restaurants in the area. No middlemen, no complications. Jennifer liked the idea. It was a way to use the experience she had gained during all that turmoil, but in a simple and transparent manner. And the profits? We split them 50-50. Everything documented, everything legal. I accept. The new company, named Village Seafood, started small but grew quickly. The quality of the fish and the honesty in handling the business made several local restaurants become loyal customers. Christopher James, now 7 years old, loved helping with the business. He learned to do math in his head and always impressed customers with his politeness and cleverness. Ethan, now 3 years old, was the joy of the house. He ran along the beach, played with the fishermen, and was growing up strong and healthy. 1 year after all the turmoil, Jennifer was sitting on the porch of her house, watching the children play in the yard. Mrs. Dorothy was preparing dinner in the kitchen while humming an old song. Michael, she murmured, looking at the sea, I hope you're proud. I managed to take care of our children and discovered I'm stronger than I thought. The wind brought the salty smell of the sea, and Jennifer smiled. She had discovered painful secrets about her husband, faced dangerous people, fought in court, and won. More importantly, she had learned that she was capable of supporting the family and building a prosperous future for the children. Rachel arrived for dinner, as she did every Friday. She had become part of the family, Aunt Rachel, whom Christopher James adored and who always brought gifts for Ethan. How was business today? Asked Rachel, sitting on the porch. Very well. We got 2 more customers in Cape May. Great. Soon we'll need a bigger boat. Slow down, Rachel, Jennifer laughed. Let's grow slowly. I've had enough experience with businesses that grow too fast. You're right. Slow and steady. During dinner, Christopher James talked about his school lessons and how he was helping a little classmate who had trouble with math. Mom, can I go fishing with you tomorrow? Yes, you can, but first you have to finish your homework. I already did. Ethan, who was learning to form complete sentences, said, I want to go on the boat too. When you grow a little more, my love. Mrs. Dorothy looked at the family gathered around the table and sighed with contentment. Michael would be happy to see you all like this. After dinner, when the children were already asleep, Jennifer and Rachel stayed talking on the porch. Have you ever thought about getting married again? Asked Rachel. Not yet. For now, I'm focused on the boys and the business. And you've never told me about your love life. After all that unrequited passion for Michael, I've been a bit wary of relationships. But you're a beautiful, smart, hard-working woman. Any man would be happy to have you by his side. Thank you, Jennifer. Knowing I have a friend like you already makes me very happy. The 2 women looked at the sea in silence. So much had changed since that morning when Jennifer found the boat adrift. Pain, anger, fear, struggle, victory. It had all been worth it. "Rachel, can I ask you a question?" "Of course." "Do you really think Richard had something to do with Michael's disappearance?" Rachel became thoughtful for a long time before answering. "Jennifer, I prefer to believe that Michael simply decided to start over somewhere else. Maybe he realized the business was getting dangerous and chose to disappear rather than put his family at risk." "Do you think he's alive?" "I don't know. But if he is, I'm sure he'll come back one day. And when he does, he'll find a strong and prosperous family, thanks to his wife's courage." Jennifer smiled. She liked to think that Michael was alive somewhere, perhaps regretting having abandoned his family, but unable to return for some reason she would never know. "If he comes back," she said, "he'll have a lot to explain." "But would you forgive him?" "I think so. After all, it was thanks to his secrets that I discovered my own strength." When Rachel left, Jennifer made her final rounds through the house. She checked if the children were covered, if the doors were locked, if everything was in order. In the kitchen, she found Mrs. Dorothy washing the last dishes. "Mrs. Dorothy, you don't need to wash dishes. I'll do that." "It doesn't bother me, dear. I like to feel useful." "You've always been useful. If it weren't for your support, I never would have been able to face all of this. You're stronger than you think, Jennifer. You just needed a difficult situation to discover that." "You're right. And now, what are your plans for the future?" Jennifer sat at the kitchen table. "I want Christopher James to study at a good school, maybe even at a university when he grows up. Ethan, too. And you?" "I want our business to grow, but always in an honest and transparent way. I want to help other fishing families, maybe teach other women how to become independent. Those are beautiful plans. And you? Do you have any plans?" Mrs. Dorothy smiled. "My plan is to see my grandchildren grow up happy and healthy, and to take care of my warrior daughter-in-law." That night, Jennifer took a long time to fall asleep. She kept thinking about everything that had happened over the past few months. She had discovered that her husband had secrets, faced dangerous people, fought in court and won. More importantly, she had discovered that she was much stronger and more capable than she ever imagined. The boat she found adrift on the beach had been the catalyst for profound changes in her life. What seemed like the end of a hope turned into the beginning of a new life. Now, with financial stability, a thriving business, and a united family, Jennifer could look to the future with optimism. Her children would have opportunities she never had, and she would be able to give them not just material support, but also the example of a woman who knew how to fight for her rights. Before falling asleep, she said a silent prayer. "Thank you for giving me the strength to face the storms, and if Michael really is alive somewhere, protect him too." The sound of the ocean waves lulled her to sleep, bringing dreams of a promising future for her and her children. 2 years had passed since that fateful morning on the beach. Life in Fisherman's Cove had changed significantly, not just for Jennifer, but for the entire community. The village seafood business had expanded and now employed 15 people from the cove, including fishermen, fish processors, and sellers. Jennifer and Rachel had become examples of female entrepreneurship in the region. Christopher James, now 9 years old, was among the best students in school and showed a natural interest in business. Whenever he could, he helped his mother with calculations and loved talking to customers. Ethan, 5 years old, had become a cheerful and sociable child, loved by everyone in the cove. He was learning to swim and dreamed of becoming a fisherman like the father he never knew. Mrs. Dorothy, at 67, had become a kind of matriarch in the community. Her house was always a gathering spot for the women of the village who came seeking advice and support. Rachel had bought a small house in the village and moved there permanently. Her partnership with Jennifer had evolved into a deep and lasting friendship. One Saturday afternoon, Jennifer was organizing business papers when Christopher James came running into the house. Mommy, there's a man outside asking for you." "What kind of man?" "A tall man with a beard. He said he knew Daddy." Jennifer felt her heart race. Could it be, after all this time? She went out to the porch and saw a man around 40 years old with dark hair, a graying beard, and wearing simple clothes. For a moment, her heart nearly stopped. There was something familiar about that face. "Are you Jennifer Thompson?" "I am. Who are you?" "My name is Stephen Paul. I was a friend of Michael's." "Michael? My husband?" "Yes. We worked together on an industrial fishing boat. He told me a lot about you and the boys." Jennifer sat in the porch chair, feeling her legs tremble. "Do you know what happened to him?" Stephen Paul looked around, seeming nervous. "May I sit? It's a long story." "Of course. Christopher James, go get Grandma and play in the backyard." When they were alone, Stephen began to tell, "Michael isn't dead, Jennifer." The words hit Jennifer like a bolt of lightning. "What do you mean?" "He's alive, but he can't come back." "Why?" "Because he's in prison." Jennifer's world spun again. "Prison where?" "In a prison in Honduras. He was accused of smuggling." "Smuggling what?" "Goods." "But he's innocent, Jennifer. He was tricked." Jennifer tried to process the information. Michael alive, but imprisoned in another country. "How do you know all this?" "Because I was with him when it happened. We were hired to transport a shipment of frozen fish to Honduras. Only inside the fish, there were other things hidden." "What kind of things?" "Smuggled electronics. We didn't know anything about it." "So you were tricked?" "Exactly. The man who hired us said it was just fish. When the Honduran police found the goods, they arrested everyone." "And you? How are you free?" "I managed to prove my innocence because I had documents showing I was just an employee. But Michael was considered responsible for the operation." Jennifer was stunned. "How can I help him?" "He needs money to pay for a lawyer. That's how the Honduran justice system works. With a good lawyer, he can be freed." "How much money?" 20,000 rays. Jennifer hesitated. She had the money, but something about Stephen's story didn't completely convince her. "Why did it take you so long to come find me?" "Because I was also imprisoned. I only got out a month ago." "And why didn't Michael write? Didn't send any message?" "He wrote, but the letters never arrived. Mail there is very complicated." Mrs. Dorothy appeared on the porch. When she saw Stephen, she stood still, looking at him. "Who is this man, Jennifer?" "Mrs. Dorothy, he says he knew Michael, that he knows where he is." Mrs. Dorothy approached and examined Stephen carefully. "Michael never told me about any friend named Stephen." "Mrs. Dorothy," said Stephen, "Michael told me you make the best acarajé in the village. He said the recipe was from your mother." Mrs. Dorothy was surprised. It was true. Michael loved telling that story. "He really said that?" "He did. And he also said you have a scar on your left arm from when you burned yourself cooking when he was a child." Jennifer looked at her mother-in-law's arm. The scar was there, small but visible. "All right," said Jennifer. "I'll help, but I want proof that Michael is really alive." "What kind of proof?" "A recent photo, a letter written by him, something that proves this story is true." Stephen hesitated. "It's hard to get those things there, but I can try." "Then here's the deal. When you bring concrete proof, I'll give you the money." "Jennifer, every day that passes is more dangerous for Michael. The prison there is terrible." "I understand. But I need to be sure before handing over such a large amount." Stephen stood up. "All right, I'll try to get the proof. Can I come back here next week?" "You may." After Stephen left, Jennifer kept talking with Mrs. Dorothy. "What did you think of him?" "I don't know, dear. On one hand, he knew things about Michael that few people knew. On the other hand..." "On the other hand what?" "On the other hand, there's something strange about the whole story. If Michael has really been imprisoned for 2 years, why didn't any authorities notify us? Why are there no records?" Jennifer had the same doubts. "Do you think it's a scam?" "It could be. Or Michael might really be in trouble." "What should I do?" "Do what you did with Richard. Ask attorney Jonathan Miller for help." Jennifer thought the suggestion was excellent. The next day she called Jonathan and scheduled a meeting. "Attorney, a man appeared saying Michael is alive but imprisoned in Honduras." "What kind of imprisonment?" "For smuggling. He wants 20,000 reais to pay for a lawyer. Jennifer, this looks like a scam. But let's investigate before drawing conclusions. How? I'll contact the Brazilian embassy in Honduras. If there really is a Brazilian named Michael Thompson imprisoned there, they'll know. How long will it take to get this information? A few days? A week at most? Thank you, attorney. I'd rather be sure before giving money to anyone. While waiting for the investigation results, Jennifer couldn't stop thinking. What if Michael really was alive and imprisoned? What if she took too long to help and something terrible happened to him? On the other hand, there was something in Stephen's story that didn't add up. Why had he taken so long to look for her, and why was there no official record of Michael's imprisonment? Rachel, when she heard the story, became even more suspicious. Jennifer, I think it's a scam. After all the money you managed to get, it's natural that people would appear trying to take advantage. But he knew details about Michael that few people knew. Anyone who spent time with Michael could know those things. You're right. It's better to wait for Attorney Jonathan's investigation. A week later, Jonathan called with the results. Jennifer, there are no records of any Brazilians named Michael Thompson in Honduran prisons. Are you sure? Absolutely. I contacted the Brazilian consulate directly. They checked all records from the last 5 years. So it really is a scam. It appears so. And there's more. I did some research on this Stephen Paul. There are records of him running similar scams in other cities. Jennifer felt anger and sadness at the same time. For a moment she had believed Michael was alive. The disappointment was great. What should I do when he comes back? Confront him with the information, and if he insists on the story, threaten to call the police. When Stephen returned the following week, he brought no proof of the story he had told. I couldn't get the photos or the letters. The situation there is very difficult. Stephen, said Jennifer, I investigated your story. Stephen's face changed. What do you mean? I contacted the Brazilian embassy in Honduras. There's no Michael Thompson imprisoned there. Stephen tried to argue. Maybe he's registered under a different name. Sometimes that happens. No. And I also found out that you've pulled similar scams in other towns. Stephen remained silent for a few seconds, then sighed. All right. You found me out. Why did you do it? Why did you make up this terrible story? Because I'm desperate, Jennifer. I have debts, family problems. When I heard you'd received a large inheritance, I thought, you thought you could trick me using my husband's memory. It was wrong, I know it was wrong. Jennifer felt pity for him, but also anger at the cruelty of the scam. Do you know what it meant for me to believe for a week that Michael was alive? I'm sorry, Jennifer. I didn't think about how much this would hurt you. Leave, Stephen, and don't come back here again. After Stephen left, Jennifer cried heavily. It had been cruel to discover the hope of seeing her husband again was false, but it had also been liberating to finally be certain that Michael wouldn't return. Mrs. Dorothy comforted her. My dear, at least now you can grieve properly. You can accept that he's gone and move forward with your life. You're right. I was always waiting, always wondering. Now I know I need to build my future without him. That night, Jennifer made an important decision. She went to the room where she kept Michael's belongings and organized everything into boxes. Some things she would keep to show the children when they grew up. Others she would donate to people in need. Christopher James helped organize his father's things. Mummy, why are we doing this? Because Daddy isn't coming back, my son. And we need to accept that to be happy. Can I keep this photo of him on the boat? Of course you can. Ethan, still too young to understand everything, just helped by putting things in boxes. When they finished organizing, Jennifer felt lighter. It was as if she had finally said goodbye to Michael and was ready for a new chapter in life. The next day, she had an important conversation with Rachel. Rachel, I need to ask you something. Anything. If someday you meet someone and want to get married, don't let our society stop you. Why are you saying this? Because you deserve to be happy, and so do I. Maybe one day I'll meet someone special too. Are you thinking about remarrying? Not right now, but who knows in the future? What matters is that we're both open to happiness. Rachel smiled. Thank you for saying that, Jennifer. It's good to know I have your blessing to be happy. You do. And you'll always have my support no matter what decisions you make. A few months later, Rachel did meet someone special. He was a teacher at Christopher James's school, a kind and intelligent man named David. Jennifer, I really like David, but I don't want this to affect our friendship. Rachel, I'm happy for your happiness. David seems like a good man. He is, and he loves children. He's already said that when we marry, he'll treat Christopher James and Ethan as his own. Are you getting married? He hasn't proposed yet, but I feel he will soon. Jennifer hugged her friend. You deserve all the happiness in the world. Rachel and David's wedding was a beautiful beach celebration at Fisherman's Cove. The whole community participated, and Jennifer was the maid of honor. During the celebration, one of the guests, a merchant from New York named Daniel, approached Jennifer. Are you the owner of Village Seafood? I am. I represent a restaurant chain in New York. We're interested in making a contract with you. What kind of contract? Exclusive fish supply for 15 restaurants. It's a large contract that could triple your business. Jennifer was interested, but also cautious. Past experiences had taught her to be more careful with big business deals. Can I think about the proposal? Of course, here's my card. Call me when you decide. That night, Jennifer talked with Mrs. Dorothy about the proposal. What do you think? I think you should analyze it carefully, but this time you already have experience. You know what to ask, what to demand. That's true. I'm not that naive woman I was 3 years ago. Exactly. Now you're an experienced businesswoman. Jennifer decided to accept the proposal, but with strict conditions. A well-defined contract, guaranteed payments, protective clauses for both parties. The negotiation took 3 weeks, but in the end, both parties were satisfied. The new contract meant not only more money, but also more jobs for Fisherman's Cove. Jennifer hired 20 more people, including women, to work in fish processing. Christopher James, now 10 years old, had become a sort of mascot for the company. Everyone treated him like the little boss, and he loved that responsibility. Ethan, at 6 years old, was learning to read and write, and always said that when he grew up, he would work with his mother. One day, Christopher James asked a question Jennifer didn't expect. Mom, are you never going to get married again? Why are you asking that, my son? Because Aunt Rachel got married and is very happy. I want you to be happy too. Jennifer was moved by her son's maturity. My love, I am happy. I have you, I have my work, I have a good life. But aren't you lonely when we're asleep? It was true. Jennifer sometimes felt lonely, especially during the long nights when the children were already asleep. Sometimes I am, yes, but it's not a sad loneliness. If you met someone nice, would you date? Jennifer smiled. Maybe, if it's a good person who likes you too. I would like that. Ethan would too. A few weeks later, during a business meeting in Boston, Jennifer met Brian, a veterinarian who worked with fish farming. He was helping her company implement better conservation practices. Brian was a 35-year-old man, kind, intelligent, and clearly admired Jennifer's determination. It's impressive how you built all this, he said during a business lunch. I had to learn the hard way, Jennifer replied. Circumstances forced me to be strong. Not everyone can turn difficulties into opportunities like you did. Jennifer realized she enjoyed talking with Brian. He treated her as an equal, respected her opinions, and showed genuine interest in her story. When she returned home that night, Mrs. Dorothy noticed she was different. Did something good happen today? Why do you ask? Because you're smiling in a way I haven't seen in a long time. Jennifer told her about Brian, and Mrs. Dorothy was happy. It's time for you to think about being happy again, dear. Michael would want you to move on. In the following months, Brian began visiting Fisherman's Cove regularly, always with professional excuses, but clearly interested in Jennifer. Christopher James and Ethan liked him immediately. Brian knew how to talk to children, understood fishing, and always brought small gifts. Mom, Ethan said one day, is Uncle Brian your boyfriend? Jennifer laughed. Why are you asking that? Because he looks at you the same way Uncle David looks at Aunt Rachel. From his 6-year-old perspective, Ethan had noticed something Jennifer was still reluctant to admit to herself. One Sunday afternoon, Brian asked to speak with Jennifer alone. Jennifer, I know your life is complicated. You have the children, the business, responsibilities. That's true. But I would really like to be part of that life, if you'll let me." Jennifer looked into his eyes and saw sincerity, affection, and respect. "Brian, I don't know if I'm ready for a serious relationship." "You don't need to be ready right now. We can take it slow at your own pace. What if it doesn't work out? Then we'll be adults and remain friends. But what if it does work out?" Jennifer smiled. "If it does, maybe I'll discover I can be happy in a way I never imagined." "So is it worth trying?" "It is." Jennifer and Brian's relationship evolved slowly, with care and mutual respect. He gradually integrated into the family's life, always respecting Michael's place in the children's memory. 1 year later, Brian proposed to Jennifer. The ceremony was simple and beautiful, held on the same beach where she had found the drifting boat years before. Christopher, James, and Ethan were groomsmen. Rachel was the maid of honor, and Mrs. Dorothy cried with happiness throughout the entire ceremony. During the reception, Jennifer looked around and saw everyone she loved celebrating her happiness. The entire community was present, including many of the families who now had work thanks to the business she had built. "What are you thinking about?" asked Brian, approaching her. "I'm thinking about how surprising life is. 5 years ago, I was a desperate widow not knowing how to support my children. And now? Now I'm a successful businesswoman, married to a wonderful man, mother of 2 happy children, and part of a strong community. You deserve all this happiness, Jennifer. We deserve it, because now we're a real family." End of story. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out now continuing. So what did you think of this incredible story of overcoming adversity? Jennifer managed to turn a painful discovery into a new chance at life. Do you think she made the right decisions? Tell us in the comments which part moved you the most. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss other moving stories like this one.